Hey everybody, welcome back to another JBoz Gaming video, and I'm your host JBoz, and today we're going to start our series on map strategy. The first map that you may encounter, it depends on your tier of course, um, is mines, and so that's what we're going to start this series off with. Um, Maps are based on the tier of tank that you would be playing. And some people get a little confused by this in that if your tank plays up to a higher tier, then it's also a possibility that you might encounter maps that you don't normally encounter when playing that tier. For example, let's say I was in a tier 4 tank, and here is the list of tier 3 through 4 maps that you would get if you were playing in these tiers typically, meaning that you're in a tier 4 battle or a tier 3 battle, meaning the highest tier in that game is either a 4 or a 3. And so you would be either on Himmelsdorf, Mines, Cliff, Abbey, Mountain Pass, Port, Ghost Town, Pilsen, or Lakeville. And then, if you were playing tiers 1 and 2, then they only play on mines. However, if you're in a tier 2 tank and find yourself where you're playing in a tier 3 battle, then you would be able to play on these maps as a tier 2 tank, even though the Wargaming lists mines is the only map that tiers 1 through 2 play. So that's just kind of trying to explain to folks that you do at times, depending on your tier, play up. And when you play up, you do tend to play different maps. So just know that there are different maps out there that you will play based on your tank tier. In this case, we're going to be kind of focused on mines, and even though mines is available at higher tiers, so for example 5 through 8, you'll see that mines is listed as well. So you can play mines all the way up to tier 8 so far. And then if we look a little bit higher, actually, tiers 9 through 11, though 11 is completely different, tiers 9 and 10 are what we're really talking about. You will see that all of these maps are for these higher tier tanks. So again, you can find yourself playing on some of these smaller maps, even though these maps were intended for maybe some lower tier tanks, and vice versa. You can find yourself playing in a little bit larger map with a lower tier if you're playing up against higher tier tanks. All right, so with that being said, let's hop back over and let's talk about the mines map. So there's a couple things that we kind of want to go through here, and that is within a particular map, there's different scenarios this map can be encountered on. So for example, if it's a standard battle, then each side has an opposing flag position. And just kind of quickly, let's do some painting of the brush here. We'll do red and green to represent the different caps, if you will. And so our red team, we'll assume that the green team is our ally team. It's in the lower portion of the map, and the red team is going to be in the upper portion of the map. So if we do, let's say we do something like, let's do 40 pixels. That's probably big enough. Let's put this down here. So actually, you know what? Let's actually change this. Let's do something where we actually draw it a little bit more to scale. It's okay if it's not quite perfect, but the red team's circle would be like kind of here, and the green team's circle, if you will, is going to be down below. So let's draw where that we might encounter that particular flag position, and let's change this actually to the green team. So So if we kind of think about it, let's say our team starts down here. Generally in a standard battle, you're going to have two flag positions, one up in the left corner and one down in the lower right corner. Depending on which side of the map you start on, let's say you're on the red team, then you'll try to be capture. They'll try to capture the opposite, obviously, flag. And if you're on the lower portion of the map, you're going to try to be capturing the one on the opposite corner. So now if it's an encounter battle, then no one really kind of owns the cap. I'm sorry, it's one that both teams can capture. And with that being said, then there is the ability to actually both teams would have the ability to capture that particular cap spot. And that's generally over here, and we'll kind of make that white. Now, you don't have these all on the same map at once, but I'm just trying to show you the different locations. And then, of course, if there is no cap, let's say it's a team destruction situation, then you wouldn't have any of these caps appearing on the map itself. All right. So with that being said, where the flags are located or will not be located in the case of a team destruction, let's move on to actually looking at the different routes of that people actually flow from one side of the map to the other. So if we kind of go back and kind of think of the green team as our allied team, let's do kind of a quick synopsis on what are the different routes that we can take to the enemy cap. On mines, there's kind of three main areas that people will traverse through or across, and I refer to this side. Oops, see, I'm already drawing the wrong color, so cancel that. Let's go with green. Let's undo that. And so on the green side, you have from your spawn point, you can traverse on this right side or this right flank through what I call the city. This is this area right here, and down the flank to the opposite team's cap. Okay, so this route can be defended by the red team in multiple ways, but this is one route of attack if you're kind of starting on the lower portion of the map. Another route of attack is basically through what I call the middle of the map, and that is up through this area and on to their cap over here, right? And then there is a third main way, and you can of course go down the river. Oops, you can go down the river and proceed to their cap that way. So there's three ways. The middle, what I call the middle, and in fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and throw some labels on here just so you can see where that might be located. So we'll do white, and let's see, we'll throw, yeah, this is fine. We'll say this is the city, and again, you might refer to these things differently, and that's okay. Just as long as you know the general area that I'm talking about, the middle area. And there's actually a kind of a hill in the middle that we'll talk about here in just a second. And then what I refer to as the river, or it's because there's water over here, and so I refer to it as a little river that runs north and south on the map. So that's on this side. Actually, let me actually move that over a little bit. So let's do the middle here, because we're talking about that. And let's put that right here. Oops. Middle. L. There we go. And then let's also put this river. We'll move it over just a wee bit over here, so you can kind of get a sense of where that's at. So now, traversing the opposite direction, the enemy team or the red team, if you spawn up here, would be your cap, and you would come through the same kind of avenues, if you will, of your attack, you would come through the river, you'd either come through the middle, or you'd come through the city. The difference is you're starting in a spawn location closer to over here, and so some of these are some of these are faster than others. Obviously, when we're talking about the southern portion of the map and the green team, this is the further route. This is the second furthest, and this is the shortest route to get to the enemy cap. Now, generally, there's kind of offshoots or different ways you can kind of go off of these. And so let's talk about that a quick second. So as we're moving up through the middle, maybe we can detour and we can come in to this location and drive and begin to shoot here. Even though we're not capturing the cap, we're taking a strong attack position against the enemy. And vice versa, they could drive. In fact, let's do that. We'll show their routes of attack. They can come through the middle, right? And as they detour, they can detour here and have then attacks of opportunity on the middle here. So both of these are good attack positions, even though you're not going all the way to the cap. And vice versa, they can come on obviously to the cap if they want. And they also have these routes as well through the city to come to the opposing team's cap. And they also can come straight through the river and over here to the cap. There is a little bit of diversion in the sense that you can take longer routes, right? Go way around, come through here, right? Come through here, right? And you can still get to the other person's cap. Well, that's fine, but in general, I consider this all one flank because you can easily shoot the people up here as well as shooting the people down in the river. So this is all one flank if you really think of it that way. This middle part I consider a main fighting point on the map, and then the city is the other kind of fighting point on the map. So even though, as a green team, you can also take kind of this route, this long route around and come through, right, to get to their cap. That's okay. But just consider these two routes the same. So if you think of it that way, and I'll kind of draw these as maybe a yellow slash mark. This river area right here is all one flank. This middle portion is all one kind of fighting area or flank. And then there's a city portion of the map. So there's really only 3 areas of the map to kind of come through. Okay. Now, with that being said, there are some defensive points that we can also take up to counter these attacks. And so one of the defensive points that we want to take up is actually, you know what? Let's what we'll do is we'll kind of clear this up so you can see this a little more clearly. I'll take off the routes of attack. And what we can do is we can talk about the defensive points about now how do we stop these attacks. So on the green side, there is positions for, tanks that are going to snipe here. I think this is generally K4 on the map, where you can get behind this little rock and snipe into the middle and snipe down the river and snipe down, I believe this will be the 1 line. And so you can kind of hold this side of the map in this position. There's also positions behind a rock here and also here that will give you sights into the middle a little bit and then into the city more. So you have, you can get defensively if you want to put someone here on the defense of the city route. You can get behind this rock here that we see in the middle of the green spawn area. And so these positions here are good defensive spots. Because they can see at least 2 out of the 3 areas. Now, there's also forward defensive spots, such as right here. I call this the horseshoe. And so you can move up and take your position here to shoot anybody that's moving down from the river area. The furthest forward kind of defensive position is right here behind this rock, or there is a lighthouse here that you can kind of get behind the base of it and fire towards their cap. The forward kind of defensive positions, like I mentioned, you can drive up into the middle and be able to fire on their cap and shoot people that are trying to come down these flanks here. The opposite is true of the red team. Well, we'll cover that in just a second. I'm just doing the green team right now. The defensive positions, the forward defensive positions over here, are as you come around, there is a little rock that you can drive between the kind of cliff face here and this little rock. That is a defensive position to kind of hold this route. There's also, you could drive all the way up and kind of get a defensive position behind this mountain to shoot people that are coming this way. So these are the kind of defensive spots that the green team would have. Okay. Now, if we're looking from a red team perspective, what are their defensive positions that they might want to take up? Well, they have a plateau back here, and you'll see a lot of players take the defensive position on this plateau to fire into the middle, to fire into the city, or they can also fire into the river. So the advantage of this is that they can defend in one spot here all three kind of avenues to their cap. They will also have, kind of a forward defensive position where this is a big rock, and you can hide behind that to shoot people in the river. Other times you'll see somebody over here on the opposite side taking a defensive position. You'll have people take defensive positions here at the edge of the rock outcropping that starts to, as the land starts to go up, you can sit behind this and you can get defensive positions into the people that are trying to get into the middle. And then, of course, another defensive position here, if you can get there first, is the opposite of the green team, and that is to hold this side. You can also get defensive positions here and here, kind of opposite the green side, to try to get the forward kind of defensive positions if you can. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, you can drive up through the middle and into this middle area and get defensive forward positions here, shooting onto the green cap and any defenders that might trying to defend the green flag, right? So those are kind of the defensive positions of the red team. I don't know if I put a defensive position, but the green team also has an opposite defensive position here on the lower side to prevent people from getting into the middle as well. Now these are okay defensive positions, but you have to be careful in that once the opposite team, let's say this is the green team here, once these teams are in this position, you can easily be fired upon. So these forward defensive positions that I've kind of mentioned, they can be countered by the opposing team getting their forward position. So it's really who gets there first. So kind of keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out where you're going, is really have a spot picked out before the battle starts of where you want to head first so that you can get there early, and hopefully you can take the forward position that you want to take for your team to have that defense, but also take away a potential forward position for the opposing team. Now, when the green team has these positions, such as behind the horseshoe or behind here, again, this counters these two positions. So you have to either be very aware if someone's up here on the red team and you're in these green defending positions to make sure that you don't get sniped by these positions. If you flip that around, how do you take away this position? Well, the only way to take away this position is really the opposite, right? The opposite green positions, the forward and green positions that can get here. So this can take that away. And the same thing is these become less productive defensive positions when the green team has these spots, right? And then, of course, these two, depending on, it doesn't matter whether you're the red team or the green team, once you get here, if someone has tanks over here, either in this position holding the middle, right, from the green team coming up, or in this case, they might be here trying to hold the red team come up. Either way, these positions can fire on these, and these positions can fire on these. So be careful when the opposite team has the opposing defensive spots, and that opens you up for counter fire. And so you want to know when you're in a forward position the kind of threat, the other threatening forward positions that you might have. If that makes sense. So this map strategy is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple, pretty general, but that's really how you can play this map. Now, with that being said, let's talk about, and knowing that there's basically three routes to go, the river, the middle, and the city, let's talk about the different tank types. So on this map, usually light tanks can really kind of go any direction they want to go. They can go to the river, they can go into the middle, go all the way across if they can make it, or they can get into the middle to get these defending positions depending on which team they're on, right? And then we can also go to the city without any problem because there's not going to really be a whole lot of tanks. With our speed and light tanks, we can generally make it to the city, and then we've got buildings to hide behind and so on, right? Or we can continue to push the flank. So getting to these positions is always, kind of crucial in a standard battle to get to the pushed up defending positions, because you really start to take away other positions that your enemy can get into. All right, so that's the light tanks. So light tanks can really go left, right, and through the middle. Okay, there's no restriction on light tanks on the mines, and that's why it makes for a good lower tier map. One, the map is just generally not that big, but also the lower tiers have a lot more light tanks than they do any other type of tank, and so that's why they're really, this map is good and versatile for those lower tier tanks. Now, if you're in a medium tank, your ability to get to these forward positions that are not as far out, but still out a little, maybe might be a better choice for you versus trying to get all the way to the lighthouse in a medium tank, where the light tanks will be maybe already in position. By the time you get there, you're going to take damage trying to get that far forward. So maybe you'll go for one of these lesser but still forward positions, like, if you're the green team, maybe the horseshoe, or if you're the red team, maybe you'll take a defensive position here, right? So that you're not trying to get too far forward. Maybe here and here, here, the opposite teams. Sorry, let me remove that. Opposite teams' defensive position for medium tanks, right? Because you do have a little bit of speed, just not the speed that light tanks generally have, and so you want to be closer to your cap and get covered up as soon as possible, but still be able to maybe take away some opposite positions if you can. And then certainly your job is to help protect and hold certain flanks. Now the heavy tanks, different story. Heavy tanks are really slow, and they might take a little bit to get in position, so they're going to be much closer to their caps. So spots like this and this are going to be more advantageous for the heavy tanks because they can get there quicker. They're not going to push up to these more forward positions like the middle and so on, because it's just going to take them a long time to get there. And by the time they start to even get there, there's going to be light tanks, maybe even medium tanks at that point, firing on their positions to get to where they want to go. So the heavy tanks will stay closer to the caps generally, and they will try to get strong defensive positions to hold flanks. So, for example, getting a heavy tank in this position is good, or a heavy tank in this position is good because now you can hold the river and you can hold the middle. Over here, you can hold this flank, right? So you can hold down a flank with a heavy tank more easily than you can with a light or medium. All right, tank destroyers. Tank destroyers are going to be, and again, there's some tank destroyers that are fast, and you can kind of play them like light tanks, and that's okay. But generally speaking, tank destroyers would sit back and take up the sniping position. So on the green team, that's like positions here where they can see, down the river, down the 1-2 line, the 3-4 maybe, and then into the middle. and then maybe even having a tank destroyer. There's a little defensive position here behind a not a turret, a pillbox, and then a defensive position here behind this. And there's a little rock here that people can sit behind that gives them the defensive position here. And this position counters the city. It shoots to the middle, and more importantly, can keep these guys locked down if they do get forward positions in the middle and are trying to shoot down onto your cap. These are kind of what I'll call the back portion of the map's defensive positions for the green team. Sometimes tank destroyers can get up into these positions where they can get out and shoot at some of the things across the map. But for the most part, for tank destroyers, they're going to be sitting at the back. So let's look at the kind of the red team's tank destroyer positions. Again, they're going to be further back on the cap, or I'm sorry, further back towards the cap. They're going to be closer to their own cap, and so they're going to be in positions like this here, right? Can you get a tank destroyer further up? Sure. You can certainly get them here and maybe even one here. You could even push a tank destroyer up here. But if they're rushing this side, a tank destroyer is not going to do you as much good as a heavy in this position. So just know that a tank destroyer is not going to lock down this flank. It might get early opportunity and shots, but it's probably not a good spot for a tank destroyer for long. So the tank destroyers are going to be closer to the cap, and they will tend to stay around their cap because they'll be in more sniping positions. So that brings us to artillery. Let's talk about that. For the green team, when you spawn in this corner, the artillery generally find themselves trying to get behind some sort of cover. So they generally back into these buildings here. So you can have spots back here. You can sit wherever you feel is best positioned for your artillery, but it's going to usually be back in this corner. Okay. And then a lot of times the red team's artillery is going to go onto the plateau and be back here. Sometimes on occasion you'll have one sitting back here. Now, the downside to having the artillery where they are is when teams get their prospective forward positions, if you will, with the red team being here, well, they will have shots, so you will have to cover up. You'll have to get behind buildings in order to protect yourself as an artillery. So you have to know that they can see over and into these areas, and vice versa. If you're on the plateau here as a red artillery, then knowing that the green have gotten the defensive forward positions here, same thing. They can shoot you, and you're more vulnerable here. So once these forward positions are obtained, then it makes it very hard for the artillery to be as effective as they can be, and they have to tend to cover up and seek protection, not just fire out in the open. And so that's why on this map, in general, the critical part of the map, drum roll, is the middle. Whoever wins the middle wins this battle probably 80% of the time. It's not that you can't win the battle by going down the river and capturing the base and killing all the tanks. You can, and people are successful at doing that. But by far, majority of battles are won by winning the middle and then controlling the middle, because that gives you the opportunity to kill the other enemy team in a much easier fashion than trying to force your way down a open flank. And that's really what this is. There's not a lot of cover moving down this flank. So, if you're in anything but a fast light tank, 9 times out of 10, if they have defensive position, doesn't matter either side, you're going to take damage just trying to get down this flank. Same is true of this flank as well. If you're trying to move down this flank and to the cap, sure, you might be able to make a lot of progress without getting hit up to this point. But as soon as you start to round the middle here, now you're open to whatever defenses they have set up on this side. And in order to make it to their cap, you've got to traverse open ground. So as you can see, both the left and right flank are fairly open no matter what. Same with the green. You may make a lot of progress here and not take a lot of damage until you get around here, and now you're open to their defensive positions, and you have to traverse open ground to get to their cap as well. And of course, anybody that controls or has the middle has shots both on this flank as well as this flank. So if a team controls this, they have shots not only into the opposing team's caps, but they also can almost control the flanks by just firing from the middle over to those flanks. That's why the middle is so important on mines. And that's why almost 80% of the time, in my experience, when you control the middle, you win this fight. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to recognize that when you're in a particular battle, let's say you've got a lot of heavies, and they're spawning on this side of the map, and you're spawning on this side of the map. Well, you can't take a heavy and make it up to the middle before let's say they have a lot of lights and mediums. They can certainly outpace you in order to get to the middle. So you're really you're trying to fight an uphill battle, so to speak. Yes, this is uphill, but it's also an open field where you're trying to run a slow tank up into the middle, and that generally isn't going to work, and that's a recipe for loss, even though you're trying to go to the middle. So, you take these general strategies as they're meant to be and apply them according to the tank you're playing and in the situations and battles that you're playing in. You do want to control the middle, but you have to pay attention to what they have and whether they have a better position to get there first. If they do, then they have the advantage. For example, let's say we are on the green team and we spawn in a light tank. Now, and it's a fast light tank. But let's say they have 3 light tanks and they are also very fast. So what do you think is going to happen is if I'm in a green tank rolling up the middle and I get here, right? Well, by the time I get here, they have 3 light tanks that have traversed this distance, which is actually a shorter distance, depending on where they spawned in, but most likely they're going to be closer spawning in the north than you are in the south. Believe it or not, this is a longer drive than this is, right? So they're going to have 3 tanks and potentially one that's already here before you even get up there. So what do you think is going to happen to you? You're going to die. So you would not necessarily automatically go to the middle in a light tank on this side, whereas here you probably would because you have the advantage to get there first. And if you're potentially outnumbered, then you can make that decision whether it's advantageous for you to push your light tank into the middle or maybe hold back and take another defensive position, right? So think about that when you're thinking about map strategy in general. So in general, that's how the mines map plays out. Please let me know if you think this strategy is helpful, or at least helps you understand the general routes that people come and go, where they generally set up, where they're located on the map. Hit that like button if this was helpful. As always, if you do like the content that I'm producing here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's always appreciated. It helps the channel grow. And of course, if you want to see when the next video drops, hit that bell, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care, everybody.